Hello everybody and welcome to Toy to You Curator's Corner episode number 13. My name's Sean Brosnan. I'm a curator at Toy to Otago Settlers Museum here in Dunedin. I've been making these little videos about early Dunedin history during the great coronavirus lockdown of 2020. Today's story is going to be about the most glamorous girls in pioneer Dunedin, the Valpy sisters. But first of all we need to consider why their father, a particularly patrician English and Anglican figure, chose to bring his family out to a Scottish Presbyterian colony like Otago. William Henry Valpy was born at Forbury in Reading, England in 1793 into a family of means, his father being an Anglican clergyman who ran an elite boys' school. After his own education at Eton, William went into the Royal Navy, but he didn't like it, so he switched places with his brother and trained instead for a civil service post in India. He subsequently spent over 30 years in India where he became a judge. But by the time he retired in 1836, Valpy's health was pretty much shot. He returned to England and settled at Bath, well known as a health spa town, and then Cheltenham. In 1845, he and his wife Caroline took their family of 5 daughters and 1 son on a 12-month tour of Europe, travelling by carriage across France, Switzerland, Italy and Germany. They spent several months in Florence where the children had a drawing master. Back home in England they were educated by private tutors and governesses. So I hope you get the picture. This is a gentry family straight out of an English costume drama with plenty of money, fine tastes and the means to indulge them. And yet somehow they ended up as pioneers in Otago. The reason was Judge Valpy's health, which took a turn for the worse in 1847. His doctor advised him to take a sea voyage, and the judge, who doesn't ever seem to have done anything by half, decided instead to emigrate to New Zealand, and specifically to the brand new colony in Otago. He rounded up a big group from extended family members and a network of friends tied together by earlier connections in India, and filled a ship, the Ajax, with this rather refined cast of characters, as well as loads of servants and their support staff, and all the gear they might need to set themselves up in Otago. Now why exactly an unwell 56-year-old retiree who was English and Anglican thought a brand new Scottish Free Church Presbyterian settlement at the bottom of the world was the place for him, I have no idea. But for Otago, in January 1849, the arrival of the Valpys was an incredible boon. Because despite all the efforts of Cargill and Burns and others over the previous 6 years, hardly any Otago land had been sold to Scottish capitalists, and the financial viability of the settlement was seriously in question. The whole Otago scheme was based on a small number of wealthy men buying land and employing less wealthy immigrants to work it for them. But all Otago seemed able to attract was the working men and their family. Now Judge Valpy was reputed to be the wealthiest man in New Zealand when he arrived in January 1849, and he was happy to splash his cash around, employing lots of Scottish labourers to work for him and donating generously to public causes. Forbury Road, for example, began as a private road built by the judge to connect the Dunedin township with his farm at what is now St Clair. Building it gave much needed work to the labouring class who dominated early Dunedin, and he paid in real money, having brought a big load of gold and silver coin with him, as well as really useful things like equipment for a flour mill and a sawmill, the first such amenities in Dunedin. But enough about Judge Valpy. What about his daughters? 4 of them came with him to Otago. Ellen, who was 21, Catherine, who was 19, Arabella, who was 15, and Juliet, who was 13. And what a glamorous addition to the pioneer Dunedin population they were. Charles Kettle wrote appreciatively about them in May 1849. The Valpys are a decided acquisition to our society. All the daughters play either on the piano or the harp, and so, with the assistance of the Cargills, we were able to get up very pleasant musical evenings. And those art lessons also came in handy. All of the girls seemed able to paint or draw, and their sketches and watercolours of early Dunedin offer some of the best views we have of its original state. And they were virtually unique in pioneer Dunedin for their freedom to roam and leisure to explore. The working class Scottish women were too busy creating homes in the wilderness, And the wives of other leading members of Dunedin society, Mrs. Kettle for example, often had their hands full looking after small children. Now there are so many stories that could be told about members of the Valpy family who altogether made a huge contribution to pioneer Dunedin and Otago. But today I just want to focus on those very first days in 1849 and the sudden appearance of those bright and talented young women in the muddy little village of Dunedin. Their father had sent word ahead to some of his nephews who lived in Australia, who came across to Otago bringing some fine thoroughbred horses with them for the girls to ride. And so, mounted on Ganymede, Ariel, Leicester and Black Clarence, they galloped far and wide around Dunedin and out to the Tyree and further beyond. Just imagine the sight of them in their fine riding habits as they galloped along St Clair Beach, perhaps the first ever to do so. Then, coming home flushed with excitement and dripping wet with seawater into the family's house in Mud Terrace, as Catherine Valpy calls Princes Street in a wonderful autobiography she wrote in 1915 as the elderly Mrs. James Fulton. There was no one else in pioneer Dunedin quite like those glamorous Valpy girls. So I hope you've enjoyed this story, and if you have, you might like to subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to be notified of future episodes. There will be more of those, but as we come to the end of the lockdown, the number will probably diminish as we go back to work and start to perform in the museum rather than at home. But there'll be further episodes, so until the next one, bye for now.